Hello, welcome once again to the White Flag Podcast. My name is Joe McNeil, and with me is the greatest belly dancer I have ever seen in my entire life, Scott Andrews.
The trick is a large belly. The surface area gives you more to work with.
It's like watching the ocean. His hips do not lie.
They only tell the truth.
Yep.
Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about, what happens when that card game that you're really enamored with loses its shine, or, you're still in love with the card game, but something happens with the company and it falls apart. Other organized play systems that just kind of die out. We've all been to, most of the people listening to this podcast have been to Gen Con. Mm-hmm. We've all seen that one booth in the front that has, a literal entire booth full of dead card games. What are you supposed to do when this happens to you? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So many of you may have some cards from an old set. I know I still have all of my Overpower card game cards from the 1990s. I remember going to Walmart and picking up packs of that before I really knew that game shops were a thing. But Overpower was a Marvel and DC card game where you used different heroes to battle each other with some very basic stats. But to me, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so it was kind of a no-brainer. But that game eventually died out. They made 6 or 7 sets, and then it kind of died. And I only ever played casually because I was a kid at the time. But that did kind of prime me for different card games. And the 90s saw a big boom with Magic the Gathering kind of started at that time, which was probably the grandfather of all card games, if you really want to think of it that way. But you saw Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! That these companies tied in with their cartoons, their other properties, or their other ways of making money off of that, their IP. But inevitably, games don't last. And you see a lot of new card games kind of crop up, and it's hard to see them last. And a lot of people will criticize them based on, well, they're not going to be like Magic, or, they're not going to last as long as that. So it's hard to dethrone already established card games enough as it is. But we've also seen a lot of times where those card games pop up and it's hard to be invested in them because you've seen so many of them die.
Yeah.
And so a big reason that we wanted to talk about it today is there's a lot of new card games that seems like are cropping up, not just TCGs, but some LCGs as well.
Yeah, we were at Gamma, and I can think of at least 5 different, new card games popping up. Bandai alone will have 2 or 3 new card games every year. We've seen quite a few Bandai card games come and go in our shop. Another one that we were talking about before the podcast was a game called Light Seekers that we were heavily invested in. We really liked the game. It was a lot of fun. And it was through, Tomy, and basically it was kind of on them. They kind of ran their own game into the ground. And you do see that as well. Some of these younger companies will kind of overpromise, get themselves, over the edge, and then it just kind of falls out from under them. Yeah. But, for instance, Light Seekers, if you still have decks of Light Seekers cards, there's nothing to stop you from playing a casual game of Light Seekers with your friends. Now, I know there are some competitive players out there. I'm not one of them. But we see them come through, and if there's not that tournament scene, they're not really that interested anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a big difference. So I think the first question you really have to ask yourself is, when you're getting into a new game, or you see a new game pop up, like Altered is a new one that's pretty big right now. You have Alestrals, that's another one. There's another one coming out that's the Cookie Run.
Yeah.
It's based on the mobile app, but I guess they've got a pretty huge card game in Japan, and it's coming over here. So when you're looking at these games, I think your first question you should ask yourself is, like, what kind of player am I going to be? Are you just a collector? Maybe you just want to kind of get one of each of the cards. That's kind of where the camp that I fall in now, but that's just because of years of disappointment with games and how they've been ran. But you've also got the casual players. Is this good enough for you and your group of friends or your family, your kids, whatever, to sit at the table and play with? Or do you want to be a competitive person and see where it goes?
Yeah.
I know that when Lorcana popped up and started getting big and started seeing that some of these cards were big money, you saw a large amount of competitive players from Magic and other games migrate over to Lorcana for the chance to win some of those big cards and those big prizes.
It's turned into a very competitive scene. They have nationals and regionals and store championships and stuff like that. Now, that's not to be said you can't sit at the kitchen table and enjoy playing the game or go to a local shop and play with someone for fun. But like Joe said, it's all about kind of choosing your camp. And, the other thing to think about, I think, when you're going to get into a new card game is, how deep are you going to go? Are you going to get a starter deck and maybe a box and that will be happy? Or are you the collector that if you start, you're going to have every card? Because then, you're going to be in a lot more money if something happens and it all falls away. But, does that even matter to you? If you have the whole set and they stop making anymore, are you good with that? It's a difficult proposition. Like HeroScape right now has come back. And we all saw, when HeroScape fell away through, the company at the time's fault. But for years at Gen Con, there were people playing HeroScape and having fun, even though it wasn't being officially supported anymore.
That kept it alive. Star Wars Miniatures is another one. I know these aren't card games that we're talking about now, but it's the same principle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even, I think a good example is Doomtown. AEG picked up Doomtown and made it real big, but they ran into the problem of fatigue where they just kept pumping out too many cards. You were getting a new pack of cards, and it's an LCG, but you were getting a new LCG pack every month, and a lot of people just got really fatigued by it, and it ended. But at Gen Con, there were still people playing that.
Yeah.
And so local conventions, big conventions, they still have a home for some of those older games, and it just takes champions who like the game well enough to host it to do that. You may not be able to offer current prize support of new cards, but a lot of these games come with ways that you can make cool deck boxes or play mats or whatever to help kind of incentivize people to come out and play. But just because a game does die doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go away.
Well, and the other kind of crazy thing I always see at Gen Con every year is how big HeroClix still is. They still make HeroClix. They still support it as organized play. In this area, that's not a thing anymore, but 20 years ago, when me and Joe were deep in it, we would travel to every shop in town. We would go to small conventions, and it was every place.
3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah, comic shops carried the packs. You could find them everywhere. And it's still apparently a big thing somewhere because at Gen Con, there's lines to get the promos. There's huge tournaments, and they're still making it. So obviously somebody's out there buying it. So another kind of important aspect if you're looking at a new game, a new system, is go check out your local game shop and see, is there other people that are going to be into this? Our policy here, we have play space. If you have the passion and you want to get some people together, if we see regular people hanging out playing the game requesting it, we'll look into carrying the game for you, supporting you however we can. But we need somebody to kind of take that step and kind of take the reins for whatever this new game is. I mean, if we tried to host every game that goes on in our shop, we just couldn't.
There's not enough hours in the day.
There's just so much going on. There's so much new stuff constantly coming out. We have kind of the stuff that we run that is more of a passion for us. But it's great to see somebody that is passionate about a game. It doesn't always work out. Unfortunately, like the Star Wars card game, we had somebody come to us that was passionate about it.
Good friend Ray,
and he did a great job. It's just the community wasn't here locally. But
it's kind of more of a collector base here, and not so much a player base.
It's still going strong in other places, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's all about, looking at what kind of player you're going to be, how much do you want to get invested, and, what's your local scene like. And at the end of the day, if your game dies out, like Joe said, if you can find people that'll still hang out and play it, just because, there's no support doesn't mean you can't enjoy playing that game with your friends.
Yeah. I think I would definitely encourage you, if you're looking at a new card game, to dive in at least in spirit. You don't necessarily have to commit all your funds to it, but if you are a champion of the card game, you like it, it just kind of speaks to you in a different way, be someone who advocates for it. Set up learn to plays at the shop, work with your local shops, work with us if you're local here. Because we love to host that stuff. And all it takes is someone who just, has that passion, like Scott mentioned, to get that up and running. I mean, we're willing to run and give anything a try. We've had so many card games ran here over the years. My Little Pony, Yu-Gi-Oh was a thing here at one point in time. And some of these things do die away. Sometimes, other shops will host better tournaments or closer tournaments on the same night. That's what happened to our Flesh and Blood crowd.
Digimon was here. We had Final Fantasy.
Dragon Ball Z card.
I will put a caveat out there to anybody that sees this podcast and is like, yes, I'm going to get this card game going at the shop. Pre-order windows are a thing. If you come to us the day this comes out and says, yeah, you guys, we're going to carry this, you need to get all these starter decks and boxes of cards, at that point it's too late.
Yeah.
If a game hits like One Piece, for instance, even though it's huge right now, you just can't get it unless you've been there from the beginning, pre-ordering, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to give us some kind of notice. So if you see, there's usually previews of all this stuff floating around. They'll preview new stuff at Gen Con. It'll be on, some kind of YouTube channel talking about a new game. If you're interested, talk to us. Let us look it up and see if it is available for pre-order, what the deal is with it. We have a lot of contacts that we can get a hold of and maybe give you some more information on that kind of stuff. We just don't want somebody to come in extremely passionate and then us have to disappoint them saying, hey, it's too late, we can't get that.
And scheduling tournaments on the same note is definitely better in advance. You don't want to do 3 months out, but you probably want to do at least 2 weeks to give people time and put it on their radar. So we've talked a lot about kind of getting into it and seeing about getting into new games in spite of how other games have died out in the past for the various reasons, whether it's the company that does it or the player base or whatever. But I want to also talk about kind of what happens when you're playing a game and maybe some of the company decisions that run the game kind of rub you the wrong way. So we've got a few examples just to kind of prime you for that. Magic, right now, there's a lot of players who don't like the intermingling of other IPs like SpongeBob and, Assassin's Creed, Final Fantasy. They got all these other properties that are coming in. And for some people, that's not Magic to them. They don't want to play that. And then you've also got, we used to have a big Universes crowd, which used to be called UFS, Universal Fighting System. And for a while, they had a lot of My Hero Academia sets. Then they started kind of doing some other ones, which in the history of that card game, that was a natural thing for them. So when they brought in Attack on Titan and some of these other ones, a lot of our player base did not like the new company that had taken the game over and some of the decisions that they were making, and it just kind of completely ran them the wrong way. And the game is still big. They're still making content. They got new sets and stuff coming out. They got a Ninja Turtles set coming out later. So what happens when you're at a place where maybe that has happened to you where you're rubbed the wrong way? So I think that first and foremost, and I tried to encourage our players in the same way. Don't be so vocally salty about it. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to have an opinion about it. But I think gamers have this knack of wanting to complain to the nth degree to anyone who will hear it instead of just giving it a fair shake. I pride myself, if I play a board game that I don't like, I'm like, that's not for me. I'm not going to trash it too much unless it's just like the worst game of all time or something.
See, I'm the opposite. When I get mad, I just tell everybody that I'm mad about it, and then I throw a little fit.
Yep, he's fine with that. That's fine. And then he does a little belly dance.
Yep. And then everybody's happy.
And everyone's captivated.
No, but, my example for this would be Lorcana. As a casual player, I was not excited about the more competitive direction that the card game took. And that's fine. I have talked to a few people about it. I still run Lorcana. I still have Lorcana decks. I still like to play Lorcana casually with friends. If I'm not going to partake in organized play, that's fine. That is completely fine. If other people want to be more competitive, fine by me. And that's as easy as it is. If other people are still enjoying it, let them do their thing, and you can find something new and something else to be passionate about.
There's a lot of games out there. So, and you don't have to necessarily sell off all your stuff, but we've seen that happen too with Pokemon recently. With the drought that we're having, we've seen a lot of collectors and casual players kind of sell all their stuff and start looking for other games. You know, we've sold a decent amount of Altered because of that. Some people look at that and like, oh, this is another casual, fun-looking game. Let's go into that. So with Pokemon, a lot of people are selling their stuff because like the market's really high for it. It's the highest it's been at least in the 11 years we've been in business. So for you, that's the decision that you would have to make. Do you want to keep those for the nostalgia's sake? Do you want to move like the higher priced products that you got, or is it something you keep to play casually and things like that with friends? And there's no wrong answer, obviously, but don't despair. You know, if something happens to your game and you don't like it, we just want to encourage that, you know, don't lose your mind about it. I think a lot of people are prone to do that right away. And
I mean, it's understandable if you've got a lot of time and money invested to be upset.
Sure.
And that's fine. Just do your best to, you know, if you never want to play, if you're so angry you're never going to play again, eBay is a great place to move stuff, even if it's a dead game. I mean, obviously, that booth at Gen Con, it's always crowded. There's always people buying all these dead card games. There's people out there that want it. I'd say eBay is probably your best shot. And then, you know, kind of poke around, see what else is out there. Odds are you'll find something else that you're, you know, just as passionate about, that is just as fun, that you will enjoy playing, and you can play the way that you want to play it.
Yeah. I think for me personally, I've been burned by different card games, so my bigger passion turned into board games, because at least with that, you buy it and that's it. It might have an expansion or two come out, but for the most part, you're getting what you get, and that's it. So you can kind of collect those and have a good collection with that. So just to kind of wrap up things, you know, it's a very crazy time in card games right now. New games popping up left and right, trying to take their little piece of the TCG pie out there. A lot of migrations happening. So as the storm is raging in the world of card games, you know, check with your local game shop, check with your friend group, and just ride it out. You know, it's not always going to be like that. You might find something better, but I would just say strongly encourage just to stay positive through the whole process. So whether you duck out, whether you switch to a different thing, or you just offload it all and switch to a different hobby, you know, that's your decision. But stay positive, encourage the people that are still playing, and there'd be no harm in you and a small group of friends just staying casual. I think right now that's kind of what Magic is.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of just casual people playing Commander.
Yeah.
There's no real standard scene, so yeah, I mean, it just kind of it survives that way. So
yeah, and most of the time we've got room, so you and your friends need a place to play, come play here. That's fine. We got all these tables just waiting.
Yep, waiting for you. Call the 1-900 number flashing at the bottom of your screen right now.
That's right. I will tell you your future.
And we will tell you what your dead pet thinks of you as well. We're psychically connected to the ether, and we can do
But
that.
only dead pets. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, just and only Cocker Spaniels. No other breed, unfortunately. So,
I'm connected to turtles.
yeah, so
Is what it is.
yeah. But thanks for joining us. Hope this was informative. Hopefully you didn't just take it as two guys rambling about stuff.
And if you did, put that in the comments.
Yeah.
Tell Joe to shut up.
Yeah. Leave a Cash App payment towards Scott, and he'll deliver a belly dance to you.
Yeah, times are tough.
That's how that works.
A lot of belly.